let's talk about when is the right time to pick your summer squash, pumpkins, anything in that family. So we're mainly talking here about like winter storing types of squash and pumpkins, like a butternut, any of your pumpkins, Blue Hubbard, any of those that you would consider something that could potentially store for the winter. Whether you're deciding to store them or not is up to you, but those are the types of squash that we're talking about. In other words, not like a summer squash or a zucchini. And here we have Abe. He has to be heard from too. So there's 3 good tests you can do to see if your summer squash and your winter squash are ready for harvesting. And the first of them is the skin test, the thumbnail test. So that is taking a thumbnail and pressing it into the skin and seeing if you're leaving an indent. You can see that this is obviously not close to ripe, this squash here. This is actually a volunteer plant from when I had chickens out here, and don't they somehow always seem to be the healthiest and least bug riddled plants? I'm not sure why that is, but it's a fun little thing, and if they're in a good spot, I often let them grow. So this has this huge butternut on it, really kind of fun. But you can see how green it is, and you can see that when I push my thumbnail in, like, that's leaving a definite large dent that is not rebounding at all. This is one I just bought locally, a little more progressed. Still could have waited to be harvested. I would have left this in the field a little longer, but that's okay. And you know, when I do the thumbnail test on this, less of a dent, not getting all the way through the skin like that. It's rebounding a little more, which means it's getting close to harvestability. You know, this one, not a problem that it was picked a little young. I'm leaving them out in the sun for a few days, a week or two, and they'll ripen up. You know, and then they'll still be good to store, great to eat. But ideally, you want to leave something like this in the garden a little longer if you have the option. Second test also has to do with skin, and that's the color. So you see, butternut should be like a nice buff color like this. You want to see it without these green lines, so these green lines will kind of get sucked up and go away as it finishes its ripening. This is almost ripe, but not quite. And you see that green, and also if you look closer, some kind of a little white, very light colored white mottling in there. Also not the end of the world, but ideally you'd like this to sit out and for a lot of that to go away too, and get more of this darker uniform buff color in there. You can see on this young one, you know, that's almost completely green and white, and that's nowhere near ripe yet. Last one is to test the stem. So the stem on this, obviously very green, still pretty tender looking. That's nowhere near being ready to harvest. This one you can see, and again, I would have left it a little longer, but you can see as it's more dried down, harder. That green is going away, and it will have a much more corky look and feel to it, very similar to cork. So if this was left to progress a little further, you'd get more of that kind of traditional brown cork look that you get on your pumpkins and things like that when they're ready to harvest. You know, even for butternut squash, for all of them, it is best to cut. So this has a nice clean cut and was cut away, not pulled away. Cut and leave the stem on. That's going to help keep your squash and pumpkins a lot better. Won't open up a wound where it can weep and can be a potential area to get into rot. So those are your 3 main tests to tell when squash and pumpkins are ready to harvest. Hope it helps take some of the guesswork out of it for you. Have a great day gardening.